Hello, Assalamu alaikum everybody. Hope you're all safe, sound, and healthy. And I thought it's about time that we sort of go through some of the basics all over again, because this is something that I've noticed, that despite the fact that people are now getting more and more aware of these things, but people still cling to their so-called culture, and justify their actions and all. And I don't understand why, when all the mishaps and all the misfortunes that have occurred because of their exact, the exact fact that they are doing this, that they are clinging to their cultures and opposing religion and, justifying their decisions, and then suddenly they remember God. That's the worst part, is that you play God and you take all the decisions and you become, you're controlling everything. And then when God actually when your own decisions go wrong, then instead of taking responsibility for it, you suddenly remember that there's a God up there and that he exists, and then you try to throw the blame on him, or you put the blame on Kismet, that, oh, it was fate, it was destiny, it was already rich. No, it wasn't. Okay. And again, I keep on reminding such people, if everything was really, really 100% for God to take responsibility for, there wouldn't be a heaven and there wouldn't be a hell. Okay, we wouldn't be judged. God would simply say, yeah, you know what, it was all my doing and I'm behind everything, so yeah, you hold no responsibility. But see, here's where God has really, really given it to us. Okay, and that is that although he has written everything beforehand, but you know what, he's written all the various options that we can and will take, and the results of each and every decision and each and every option that we allude to or that we take. You understand? That means he's covered himself completely. And then he's neatly thrown the onus on us by saying, your decision, your responsibility. You understand? Okay, I'll give you this example. I gave this example a very, very long time ago when trying to explain destiny, right? Imagine you're on the road. You're going from point A to point B. Now, there are 3 different ways to go from point A to point B. Which way to take? That is your decision. Those roads already exist. That is your destiny that already exists. Okay? Those roads, they already exist. One road has always had a gutter, an open gutter running through. Another road has always been a dirt road that is not well made. The third road is probably a very long road. One of these roads are a shortcut. One of these are probably, under construction. One of them is, the longest route with a traffic jam. Now, the conditions of each road, or you may not know the condition of any of the roads, especially if it is something to do with traffic jam, or if it is to do with, a road under construction. But you know what? When it's a road under construction, obviously you do know, because there are warning signs, there are diversions, there are men at work signs, and then there's a traffic police to divert you. So yes, you do know. Now, suppose you decide to take the road that is the dirt road because it's a shortcut, and that it's a dirt road, and it's a very narrow road, and it's not completely, that, it has probably bumps and ditches and everything, right? But it's your decision. You decided to avoid the longer route and to take the shortcut, which is a dirt road. Because the other road may not even be under construction, but it probably, because of its open gutter and everything, you want to probably avoid it because of the rains. It's monsoon. Okay, that too has added to your decision making. You have decided. The roads are already in whatever condition they're in. Whatever now comes your way is your destiny. But who made it your destiny? You, by making the decision that you made. You understand? The road that you choose becomes your destiny. Each road has already a pre-written destiny. You may or may not be aware of it. Okay? But each road is already there, it already exists, so they already have whatever it is that is going on there. So it's already there. The road that you choose to take, that is your decision. And that is how free will works, and that is how destiny works. And this is why you cannot neatly blame God. You understand? And this is why actually people do tend to blame God. But this is also why you cannot blame God. This is how God has suddenly saved himself from taking full responsibility of your actions, despite the fact that he has already mapped everything out. But again, he has mapped everything out, but he has left the decision of which road to take up to you. And that ultimately becomes your destiny. You could avoid that destiny by choosing another road. That's the trick here. Okay? And that's how destiny works. So, you know what? When parents go around in the subcontinent, one of the biggest problems that I keep on and on saying is that the reason why our culture is so toxic is that our parents, our grandparents, our great grandparents may have become Muslims, but they never left some of the key culture, some of the key cultural points, some of the key traditions that actually go against Islam. They always give preference to those aspects. They give precedence to those aspects as opposed to Islam. And that in itself renders you as a believer, it renders your belief void to a large extent. You become a hypocrite. You become one of those people that the Quran talks about, or that God talks about, or the Prophet has talked about. Those people who call themselves Muslims, but they're not Muslims. You see, you either become those, or you become mushrikeen, which are those people who say they believe in one God, but they actually commit shirk by doing a lot of biddah, like going to the graves to greet their dead parents or grandparents. It's shirk. You cannot greet the dead. You can pray for the dead, but you can't greet the dead, or you can't ask something for the dead, or you can't ask God to give you something, through the dead, or whatever it is that people kind of do. I mean, I don't know. You can't go and do those and sit against the graves of saints and expect the saints' souls are going to bless you, or maybe God is going to bless you just because you're sitting by the saint's grave, and maybe just on his name. You can't. These are all forms of shirk. You can't go and get a taweez made thinking that it can help you, save you from bad luck and superstition. Superstitions generally, superstitious aspects are also part of shirk. You cannot go and listen to one scholar blindly and completely believe him without doing any research on your own. You cannot go and listen to any Maulvi or any priest or any monk or any. You can't go and listen to them, and whatever they tell you that this is what religion says, you accept it blindly and come back home and practice it. That is shirk. All these things are very, very clearly marked as shirk by the Prophet himself, peace be upon him, and by God, obviously. So why are you still doing it? And the fact that you justify yourself saying, no, we're not doing shirk. We're reciting the Quran, and the taweez has Quranic verses, and there's nothing bad in it. It doesn't matter, when the Prophet himself has said that this is all part of biddah, this is all part of shirk, this is not accepted in Islam. And whoever uses taweez should expect himself to now, to be completely removed from God's grace. So why would you want to do that, And parents who subject their children to this, despite the fact that their children do not accept it, children who know, for example, that these are all shirk and bid'ahs, but their parents, because it is deep rooted in their belief, in their culture, in their whatever, and they try to force their children to wear a taweez, or wear a charm, or wear this or wear that, or do anything to avoid the black eye. And this, listen, the black eye concept is valid, it is in Islam, but the things that people tend to do to avoid the black eye, these are all bid'ah, these are all against Islam. In Islam, there's only one thing you can do to avoid the black eye, and that is to pray to God directly. He has given you two surahs, the two twin surahs, Surah Al-Nas and Surah Al-Falaq. That is for black magic, and that is for evil eye. and that is it. Seriously, you cannot go to any peer fakir, any person who, any white witch or black witch or whatever, to get your stuff done. You can't do that. That is all shirk. Okay, so here you are. So now when you have understood that, I think you can understand how these are some of the things, as I said, I've talked about every now and then in my podcasts. I'm getting, in a way, a bit fed up of the fact that people know and then they knowingly justify their acts. And that is what really pees me off. Okay? Like parents, there are still parents who believe that no, they should they should choose who their children need to marry, which again, if you remember, the Prophet broke all those marriages that were arranged by parents. Even though the girls were happy, he told them to marry properly again if they were happy. Because he said it didn't matter that they were happy now. What mattered was that when they were getting married, they were not entirely happy with the decision. They were forced, or they were convinced forcefully, or they weren't even asked. Because as the Prophet said, no one can marry a girl off without her permission. No father can marry his daughter off without her permission. No parent can marry off their daughter without their permission. Okay? The girl's permission is essential. And it is because of this hadith that one understands that a girl has to be of a certain age where she can mentally be mature enough to choose her partner. Remember, in Islam, there is no concept of wali. There is no concept of wali, okay? But over here, because we're still steeped in our pagan culture, and in that pagan culture, man was guardian. Like in the Christian culture of Europe and America, early Europe and America, and they had also brought this pagan concept and deep-rooted it into Christianity and made it a part of Christianity, that it suddenly became part of Christian culture, although I doubt it was originally part of the original Christianity. But there it is. It is known to be part of the Christian culture, and it's known to be part of the Hindu culture, and it was known to be part of the Buddhist culture, and it was known to be part of all the pagan cultures, basically. And that is that because in those cultures you had a hierarchy in which man was above and woman was treated as property, which in Islam obviously is not the case. In Islam, a woman has a right to inheritance. A woman can be a businesswoman. She can work. She can be a salary woman. She can be a housewife. It's all on her. She can do whatever it is that she wants to with her life. Okay, and similarly, she can marry whoever she wants to when she has reached puberty. Okay, and without her permission, nobody can get her married to anybody, which means nobody can even tell her who they want her to marry to. She has to be the one to choose. The same is for boys, by the way. And this is why I say it's a toxic culture, because in our culture, it's not just the girls, it's the boys. Okay, they're both, hammered into this pagan thing that their parents own them, their parents possess them because their parents have paid for everything. So they owe their parents this much that they should at least know. And this is my biggest problem with parents, and I've actually literally heard parents say that about their kids. We spent so much on them. We took care of them. We spent our life. You shouldn't have given birth to them, man, if you didn't. I mean, seriously, because as I said, the only reason parents have a high status in Islam is because God had given them the responsibility to take care of his people. You need to understand your role as a parent, okay? Your role, your duties far exceed your rights. I'm sorry to say that, but if you look at it properly, your duties do indeed far exceed your rights over your children. Okay? That is why you have a high status. Otherwise, you would not be enjoying this high status. And as the Prophet said, just giving birth to children doesn't mean you've become parents. It is the one who takes care of the child and nourishes the child, educates the child, and bring up the child to the point where the child can take over his own life and take over responsibilities of his own life and move forward. That is a person who you call a parent. So by very definition of the word parent, can you honestly tell me that you people, especially in Asia, in the subcontinent, that you're actually parents by the very definition of parenthood in Islam. No, you're not. This is why I've always said that parents have actually failed. Especially in Asia, parents have failed miserably because you do not even know the meaning of parenthood in Islam. In Islam, being a parent means God has literally given you a sort of an authority where, on His behalf, you have to take care of His people that He's sending to the earth through you. And He's creating a bond there so that you should feel that instinct, that maternal instinct or paternal instinct to take care of that child and help that child make its way into the world as an adult, so that as an adult, that child is able to take care of his own life or her own life, take care of their responsibilities, make decisions, earn their own money, become independent, choose then their own spouses, have their own children, move on in life. Or if they do not want to marry, let them not marry. They have other goals in life, let them fulfill them. But no, parents have to control every aspect of their children's life, including who they marry and then when to have kids. Yeah. It's not that you have to now get married according to their will and the one they want to and all. This is something I've always told people when they try to, convince others about I'm like, oh, so if this is such an amazing proposal, why don't you go and get married yourself? And then they look at me as if, what have I said? Many of them look at me in shock, and some of them just look at me as if, okay, wow. And they're too stunned to even answer me. They're like totally confused. No, but seriously, if this is such an amazing girl, you go and marry her yourself. Or if this is such an amazing boy, go and get married yourself or get your own daughters married to them. Why are you running after the other person to marry them? Seriously, what's wrong with you? Your duty as parents is to make your children capable enough that they should make their own decisions. They should have a job of their own. They should do a business of their own. They should make ends meet on their own. That is actually what your duty is. Your duty is to make your children independent, so that if, God forbid, anything happens to you, they should not flounder around in helplessness. They should be able to move on in life. But no, the way parents act is they literally, even when they marry their sons off, they want to keep controlling their sons. Don't marry them, please. Please do not get your sons married and destroy another girl's life. Keep your sons to yourself. Because the meaning of getting your son married is that you should remove him from your life now, at least physically. We're not talking about morally or in a relationship wise, we're talking physically. In Islam, a man cannot get married unless he is financially independent, unless he is capable, unless he has his own house. And that is how you see it in the Middle East. Why do you think in the Middle East there is no joint family system? Because in Islam there is no joint family system. And all of those people who are always trying to justify having a joint family system, let them know that it is actually haram. And why is it haram? Do you actually think that a religion that tells you to separate the bedrooms of your children when they reach a certain age would say it's okay to have a joint family system? Your children, siblings, they share the same blood. They've come out of the same womb. And yet in Islam, you are dictated to give them separate rooms once they reach a certain age. They are not allowed to share the same bed in the same room. And you're telling me that Islam is going to forgive you for having a joint family system where you are subjecting your wife, essentially a stranger to your family. She's married you, she's not married your family. You're subjecting her to live amongst strange men. Your father is still a strange man. Your brother is still a strange man. In other words, a na-mahram. Okay? Fine, your father may not be technically a na-mahram, but he is still regarded as an outsider, which means in Islam, all and any men of your family are regarded as somebody who your wife needs to stay away from. Your wife is not supposed to be doing hijab and parda in her own house. But when you make her live in a joint family system, she is constantly in the state of parda. And sometimes she cannot always be in a state of parda. She will be confined to her own room then if she becomes very strict about it. And who's to stop your father or your brother from entering her room, which in Islam is death, by the way? Yes, according to the Prophet and the hadith that I've quoted multiple times over especially the last year. According to that hadith, the Prophet said, it is death to allow your brother to enter upon your wife's room, even if he's your own blood brother by the same parents. So imagine, technically, this is something I've been saying for many years now, that imagine that if you look at Islam and if you look at the laws and the rules and the regulations of Islam, according to that, 99% of the marriages in Pakistan, India, and I don't know about Bangladesh, to be honest, but 90% of marriages in Pakistan and India are actually Shariatan invalid. They're void. You're basically, Islamically speaking, not married. Why? Number one, arranged marriage, which is automatically void in Islam. It is not accepted as a marriage. So you're basically committing adultery where the Islamic law is concerned. If you're actually a true practicing Muslim, you would realize that you are not married, but you're actually committing adultery. Especially when majority of these marriages, not only are they arranged, but the husbands do not give haq meher to their wives there's still a huge percentage of couples where the wives are expected to withdraw from the haq meher. And in Islam, a woman is told never to withdraw from her haq meher. As Islam says, you cannot force anybody to do anything. So if a woman thinks that she can do without a haq meher, it's all on her. But as far as the Islamic law is concerned, and as far as Islam is concerned, you are advised, the woman is advised by God Himself to not withdraw her right on the haq meher. And if a man does not pay the haq meher and he consummates the marriage, then he has committed adultery. So you see, even if you manage to validate your marriage, but if you again do not follow the second step, and if you do not give her the haq meher and then you consummate your marriage, you have again committed adultery. So in how many ways are the people of the subcontinent committing adultery in the name of marriage? 90% of the marriages are invalid for either of these two reasons, according to Islam. Okay? If you really want to talk about Islam with me, then here's one point here, right there. Second is the fact that you are trying to dictate the lives of even your married children, especially your married sons. If your son is not independent enough that he has to stay with you, he has to live with you, then please do not get him married. Again, if you want him to be independent and that he should have his own house, he should have his own life, he should have everything, then he can get married. And again, it will be of his choice, because as I said, your choice is invalid in Islam. Islam is a religion where you cannot even force somebody to believe in God. You cannot force somebody to pray. You cannot force somebody to say or do anything they do not want to do. If you cannot force somebody to even believe in God, then what makes you think you can convince or force somebody to do anything? And that is why I have a problem with people who, sit down very smug and proud and they say, oh, she wasn't getting married, we convinced her. I'm like, you convinced her, you idiots. You just brought upon God's wrath and punishment on you, because on the day of judgment, you're actually going to be punished for this convincing that you just did, especially if her marriage goes haywire. Stop convincing people to get married, first of all. And number two, stop convincing people to get married that their parents or relatives want them to or have chosen for them. Okay? And stop interfering with people who do want to get married to the people they want to get married to. And boys who are not financially independent, stop asking your parents to get you married. Yes, because you see, where on the one hand, parents are not allowed to intervene or to force or to stop their children from getting married or to marry the people they want or whatever, but at the same time, men who are not capable, who are not financially independent or capable enough to give their wives their own family, their own house, their own privacy, and who cannot earn, they are not allowed in Islam to get married and create problems for their parents, for their aunts and uncles, for their siblings. Because again, remember, joint family is not allowed in Islam. It is essential that the man has to be independent, he has to be earning, he has to be established enough that he can bear his own burdens, that he should have his own house, and then only can he get married. Okay? Otherwise, he cannot. And in that case, the Prophet has advised such boys and men to get themselves active in physical activities. You know, go to the gym, take up sports, do anything, get into a physical activity. But don't go towards marriage until you are financially capable of providing your wife with a home of her own, of earning money to take care of her and her children, or your children actually. Okay? That is it. So the day you people, or the day, our people will learn to drop these pagan traditions, that is the day we will be more successful in life and as Muslims and as people, essentially. That is why we always talk about how there are no Muslims in the West, but Islam exists in the West. That's because they borrowed our laws. They borrowed all our laws. They borrowed all the social, the economical, the legal aspects of the Sharia, and they incorporated them, they implemented them in their societies, and that is why they developed. That is why they made progress, and they gave us all their shit, and they coupled it with our, ancient pagan culture. So we have colonial and pagan cultures, and we have given precedence to these two again and again. Whenever we have to choose between religion and colonial and pagan cultures. This is why our progress as Muslims in the Muslim world, generally overall, this is why the Muslim world's progress has stunted. But in those Muslim countries where they progressed as Muslims, where they kept all of this, as you can see, they have made a huge progress. Like you have Indonesia, you have Malaysia, you have, Maldives, you have the Middle East, you do have these different Muslim countries that have actually kept the Islamic traditions, they have kept the Islamic culture. They have allowed a bit of their own culture in, but they have never given precedence to that part of their culture that clashes with Islam. Notice that. That is why they have made a lot of progress in life. Okay? In Islam, the right way to get married for both girls and guys is they choose their own spouse. Okay? Parents act as mediators. And that is just out of respect, because actually this is not even necessary. Again, there is no concept of a wali in Islam. There is no concept of a wali at all. And the Prophet made that very clear. Okay? This is not an Islamic concept. This is a Hindu concept that was rearranged to very neatly, it was twisted and changed. It was, it's like Deen Ilahi that was made by Akbar the idiot, when he decided to concoct this Dine Ilahi thing where he mixed a bit of Hinduism and then he mixed into Islam, and then, he thought, oh, this way everybody can live in harmony. Yeah, right. My foot. He created chaos, if nothing else. And that is why his sons had to go back to bringing the pure, proper version of Islam back. But you see, the damage was done. And you can see it right now, how people are, that they have accepted Islam for ages. Our great grandparents, our grandparents, our parents, you have 3-4 generations of, Muslims, and yet the biddah is there, the shirk is there, the pagan culture is still predominant in all these places where it shouldn't be. When it comes to marriages, when it comes to the family system, when it comes to, independence, when it comes to social structure, when it comes to, economic structure, when it comes to anything really that is key, our culture always takes precedence over religion. And that is why we as a society haven't progressed. Again, the day we'll drop this, we'll become real Muslims, and we'll make more effort to become more good human beings, better human beings, and we can hope for some success in the hereafter. But I'm sorry to say, but this is a fact, like it or not. But I think a huge majority of Asian parents are not going to heaven simply because of these, what to them are little factors, but what to Islam are huge factors. Simply because of these factors, the way they treat their children, the way they bring their children up, the way they expect, they possess their children, the way they expect their children to be controlled by them, the way they keep the joint family system, the way they look at their conveniences whenever culture allows them, and they, brush aside religion because religion gives more freedom. It's amazing. Normally, in in Christian cultures especially, it was the opposite, where they felt religion was too strict and they wanted their freedom. In our culture, it's completely the opposite, where religion is giving us so much freedom, but our culture is calling everything taboo. Everything that religion is telling us is our divine right, all the freedoms that religion is giving us, all the freedoms that Islam is giving us, our pagan culture is saying, oh no, this is taboo. It's irony of ironies, right? This is the melting pot that is the subcontinent. This is me signing out. Not that my talking is going to help anybody, because our people are as stubborn as their fools. Apparently, they really do not believe in death. Because you know what? If you actually believed in death, if you actually believed in the accountability after death, if you believed in life after death, you would think 1,000 times before you said a single word, and you would think 1,000 times before you took a single step in life. You would be shitting your pants with every decision you make. But no, you make any decisions you want, and then you neatly blame God. You get your children married wherever you want to, and then when the marriage fails, you either blame them or you blame God. You force your children to get married, and then when you fail to get them married, then you blame God. If you know God exists, if you know He's doing everything, why the frack are you playing God? Why don't you just let God do whatever He's doing then? Why don't you just sit back and let Him do what He's doing? Why do you have to fucking play God and then blame Him when things get fucked up? That's what I want to know. This is me signing out. Khuda Hafiz.